Rockford, Illinois yesterday, and you get folks from all ends of the political spectrum. It's a great thing about our democracy is we can have that respectful conversation. You have everything from folks that say, hey, look, all you have to do is, as was mentioned, enforce existing laws, put more people on the border. And then you have a lot of people that say, hey, we need to just not have any more border enforcement and just allow everybody here to become U.S. citizens. And I think, obviously, the answer is somewhere, frankly, in the middle of that. And when you talk to folks, and it doesn't matter if they're on the right or left or somewhere in between, everybody has a heart. Everybody cares about people. And when you talk about the fact that, as Mr. Gardner mentioned, there are people here that are 5 years old by no fault of their own, sometimes 12 years old, or now they're getting ready to go to college and they realize that they're not here legally. This is something we ought to have a lot of compassion for and understand. And I think we've got to take some of the anger out of it on all sides of the aisle and just have a grown-up discussion and say, what do we have to do to fix the problem here? What do we have to do to fix the issue? Because frankly, I don't know how long I'll be in politics, but I don't ever want to have to address this again. And I think that's the thing, and that's what I hear at my town hall meetings is, when you really get past kind of the initial arguments, folks say, we just really don't trust Washington, but unfortunately, you're the ones that have to solve this problem.
And I hear similar things, and that's why people say, take it slow, talk about it, talk to us. Let's do what's right. Let's do what works for the very people that you talked about. Some call them the dreamers, people who are here at 17 years old or 14 years old and know no other country. But they're here, they're part of our communities, our society, and our schools. Let's do what's right by them, but also let's do what's right for our next generation by securing this border. I want to talk about just one story. I have a good friend back in Ashland, Wisconsin. He came here legally, but it goes to the work ethic of those who come for opportunity in the American dream, and it's Bali. He owns a nail shop in Ashland, Wisconsin, and he was raised in an orphanage in Vietnam. And the sister nuns, as he tells the story, saved money in the orphanage and they sent him to America. And he couldn't speak the language. And I think he was in Texas, where he got a job in a fast food restaurant. And from fast food, he got a job as a painter. And all the painters got mad at him because he was such a fast painter. And they're like, slow down, you're making us all look bad. He's like, no, I'm here to paint. In a very short order, he was the highest paid painter. Doesn't speak the language very well from Vietnam, but man, could he paint. Saved money, sent money back to the sister nuns in Vietnam to help the orphanage, but saved money himself, and he opened up a nail salon. And after that nail salon, another nail salon. And he sold them, and he built them, and he sold them. Eventually, he said, I don't like the hot weather anymore. So he moved up to northern Wisconsin, where he bought a building on Main Street, Ashland, right? And he opened up California Nails. And during the day, Lee does nails, and at night, this is an old 1900 building. It was barren up there. He built 5 apartments by himself at night in the upstairs of his office building. And then in the downstairs, which was not the nicest location, he smelled. He ripped it out and built new apartments downstairs. But a guy that worked all day and worked all night for his shot at the American dream, helping his people back at home, but helping our community, showing what immigrants do to make America better. And it's that story, which is the American story, that I'm fighting for, to have a system that actually works for people who are here legally and people who want a shot at what we have to offer. And with that, I would yield back to the gentleman from North Carolina for his comments on what he hears in his town halls on where we need to go with regard to immigration reform.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think it's many of the same things. First of all, people don't trust Washington to actually address this problem. We've got a pretty bad track record here in the Congress. I think the other thing, though, I hear from my farmers, from the home builders, that they need labor, and we've got to have a legal pathway to get that done. And so we've just got to do it in a way that's fair and respects the rule of law. Would any of you like to close? I believe we're getting near the end of our time.
For a few more moments, I'm going to yield to the gentleman from Illinois.
Well, thank you. And as we do wrap up our time, I just want to say thank you to those paying attention today and to my fellow members here. This is an important issue. This is the very beginning of a long discussion that we need to have, because this is too important to get wrong. This is too important to rush, because America is the greatest country in the world, and this is something we ought not ever forget. And in the process of doing that, we ought to remember that we're an America that many of us come from immigrants, and an America that, frankly, is proud of where we've come from. So with that, I want to thank the fellow members of Congress here with me to talk about this. And this is the very beginning of, I'm sure, a long discussion about where we go from here. And with that, I will yield to the gentleman from Wisconsin.
And I know our time is short, and I appreciate the discussion. And I'm about to yield back to the Speaker. And we may have a few more minutes. We can actually continue this discussion tonight. But my time is done. And so with that, I'm going to yield back to the Speaker.
The gentleman yields back.
All right, thank you.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2013, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Gardner, for 10 minutes.
I thank the gentleman, the Speaker, for the additional time to continue this conversation. Thank you for all members for this opportunity to discuss what is truly one of the biggest issues this Congress, this nation faces. I recently was talking to a reporter back home about the immigration debate taking place. They were asking about the Senate bill, asking about what the House was doing, and they said, well, aren't you acting with speed? Do you feel no urgency? And my response was, don't mistake the issue of speed with urgency, because I think the House feels every bit as urgent as this issue truly is, and truly deserves the attention of how urgent the matter is before all of us. But because of that, because of the urgency to do it right, it is going to take time, a deliberative process through this body, to make sure that we create that step-by-step opportunity for the people who are here legally, for people who want to come into this nation legally, to create the border security, the border enforcement, and then to have answers for every person in this nation. And so as we create this process, this debate, as it moves forward, every bit as urgent as any other American before us, any other person who's desiring to be a part of this country, the urgency that we all feel to make sure that this happens. And so to the gentleman from Illinois or Wisconsin, North Carolina, thank you, and would yield to anyone who wishes to continue tonight.
Well, I'm happy to jump in. Thank my colleague from Colorado for giving us this opportunity. I think the problem is just the general distrust in the way Washington does things. And you only have to look at what the process we just went through to understand why. Because any problem that we ever face as a nation, Congress can solve it by very quickly passing a big piece of legislation with a great title and saying the problem is solved. Unfortunately, in 1986, when we passed immigration reform, it didn't solve the problem. It gave amnesty now with a promise of border security later that we never saw. And I believe that's the same thing that happened with the Senate bill. We very quickly put out a bill that has a great title, thousands of pages that I doubt many folks have even read, and saying the problem is now solved. And then you immediately hear the pundits and the folks who talk on TV about what happens in Washington saying, well, the House, since you aren't quickly moving a huge bill with a nice title, you don't care. But the truth is, we do care. But we're here to represent the people of the United States of America that sent us here, and we're going to do this in a very thoughtful way, and we're going to do immigration reform the right way so that we don't have to do it again in another 20 years. And with that, I'll yield to my colleague from Illinois.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hudson.